20 of America's most brilliant doctors stood powerless as billionaire Victor Blackwell's body shut down organ by organ. Million-dollar machines screamed warnings, prestigious degrees lined the walls, yet death crept closer with each labored breath. But in the corner, mopping blood from the pristine floor, Angela Bowmont saw what none of them could see. The truth hiding in plain sight. A truth that would shatter everything they believed about medicine, privilege, and who deserves to be heard. Welcome, friends, to a story that will challenge everything you think you know about intelligence and intuition. Stay with me until the end, and please comment below which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The monitors in Suite 4000 of Manhattan Presbyterian Hospital sang their electronic death song, a symphony of beeps, alarms, and mechanical breaths that had become the soundtrack to Victor Blackwell's final days. The billionaire tech mogul, who had built empires with his bare hands and brilliant mind, now lay skeletal and gray against Egyptian cotton sheets that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Dr. Harrison Whitmore pressed his stethoscope against Victor's chest for the third time that morning, his brow furrowed with the kind of concentration that had earned him his reputation as New York's premier diagnostician. Around him, 19 other specialists formed a semicircle of medical excellence: cardiologists, neurologists, toxicologists, infectious disease experts, each one at the pinnacle of their field, each one completely baffled. "His kidneys are failing faster than we anticipated," Dr. Sarah Chen announced, studying the latest lab results on her tablet. "Creatinine levels have doubled since yesterday." "The liver's not far behind," added Dr. Marcus Thompson, the hepatologist flown in from Johns Hopkins. "Whatever this is, it's systematic. It's attacking everything." Angela Bowmont pushed her cleaning cart through the doorway, keeping her eyes down, making herself small, a skill she'd perfected over 15 years of hospital work. The doctors didn't acknowledge her presence. To them, she was as much a part of the room's fixtures as the IV stands and heart monitors. She began her routine starting with the bathroom, working methodically, while her ears caught every word of their discussion. "We've ruled out lupus, heavy metal poisoning, rare cancers," Dr. Whitmore was saying, his usually confident voice strained with frustration. "Every test comes back inconclusive or contradictory." "What about Wilson's disease?" suggested Dr. Jennifer Park, the youngest of the group, fresh from her fellowship at Mayo Clinic. "Copper levels are normal," Dr. Chen replied. "We checked twice." Angela wrung out her mop, the sharp smell of disinfectant mixing with something else. Something that had been nagging at her for weeks now. She'd noticed it first 3 months ago, when Mr. Blackwell had been admitted with what they'd initially diagnosed as a severe flu. The smell was subtle, almost sweet, like almonds mixed with metal. She'd smelled it before long ago, in a university chemistry lab she'd been forced to abandon when her mother got sick and the money ran out. "Perhaps we should consider more experimental treatments." Dr. Richard Steinberg proposed, his German accent thick with authority. He'd been brought in from Berlin specifically for this case. "There are new protocols being tested in Switzerland. We don't have time for experimental treatments." Dr. Whitmore cut him off. "Look at him. We'll be lucky if he makes it through the week." Angela moved to empty the wastebasket near Victor's bed, and that's when she saw them clearly: his fingernails. The white lines across them were more pronounced today, almost luminescent against the yellowing nail bed. Mace's lines, her chemistry professor had called them. She'd only seen them once before in a textbook chapter about chronic poisoning. Victor stirred, his eyes fluttering open. They were bloodshot. The whites turned an unsettling shade of yellow. "Water?" he croaked, his voice barely audible. Dr. Whitmore immediately moved to his side. "Of course, Victor. How are you feeling?" Like death warmed over. Victor managed, attempting a weak smile. Any progress?" The silence that followed was deafening. 20 of the brightest medical minds in the country, and none could offer their patient hope. "We're exploring every option," Dr. Whitmore said carefully. "Your body is fighting something, we just haven't identified what yet." 20 doctors, Victor wheezed, and not one answer. Maybe I should have invested in medical research instead of technology. Angela filled his water pitcher from the filtered dispenser, her hands steady, despite the racing of her mind. She'd been watching, listening, learning for weeks now. The symptoms didn't match any single disease because they weren't from a disease at all. The pattern was too specific, too deliberate. "Mr. Burke is here to see you," a nurse announced from the doorway. Jefferson Burke swept into the room like he owned it, which, given his position as Victor's business partner and oldest friend, he almost did. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of casual elegance that came from old money, Burke commanded attention wherever he went. "Victor, my friend," Burke said warmly, clasping the dying man's hand. "How are we today?" "We are dying, Jeff," Victor replied with gallows humor. "Rather inconveniently, I might add, the Shanghai deal." "Don't worry about business," Burke interrupted, pulling up a chair. "I'm handling everything. You just focus on getting better." Angela noticed how Burke's eyes didn't quite meet Victor's when he said it. She also noticed the small package he placed on the bedside table. The same imported hand cream he'd been bringing for months, claiming it was from a specialty shop in Paris that Victor had always loved. "You're too good to me," Victor said, reaching for the cream with trembling hands. "Let me," Burke offered, taking the jar and gently applying the cream to Victor's hands. The gesture seemed caring, intimate, even two old friends, one caring for the other in his time of need. Angela's stomach turned. "Doctors, perhaps we could have a moment," Burke suggested politely but firmly. The medical team filed out, discussing their next round of tests in hushed tones. Angela continued cleaning invisible as always. "You need to hang on, Victor," Burke said once they were alone, or so he thought. "The company needs you. I need you." "The company will be fine," Victor replied weakly. "You'll make sure of it. The succession plan. Don't talk like that." Burke's voice was sharp. "You're going to beat this." Angela moved to dust the window blinds, positioning herself where she could see Burke's face in the reflection. His expression was cold, calculating, nothing like the concerned friend he was playing. After Burke left, Angela lingered, pretending to organize her supplies while studying Victor. The hair loss was progressing not in patches like chemotherapy or alopecia, but evenly, leaving his remaining hair brittle and thin. His skin had taken on a dusky pigmentation, especially around the neck and joints. Classic signs if you knew what to look for. "Excuse me?" she said softly, approaching Victor's bed. He opened his eyes, focusing on her with difficulty. "Yes." "I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Blackwell, but how long have you been using that hand cream?" Victor frowned, confused by the question from someone he'd never really noticed before. "The cream. Oh, months now. Jeff brings it specially. Why do you ask?" "No reason, sir. Just be careful with it. Some of those imported creams have harsh chemicals." Before Victor could respond, Dr. Whitmore returned with several colleagues. "We need to run another round of tests," he announced. "The radiologist has an opening in an hour." Angela gathered her supplies and left, but her mind was racing. She knew what was happening to Victor Blackwell. The question was, would anyone listen to a housekeeper with an unfinished chemistry degree? And more importantly, did she have the courage to speak up when doing so might put her own life in danger? That evening, Angela couldn't concentrate on her usual routine. She cleaned the cardiac ward mechanically, her thoughts returning again and again to Suite 4000. She'd seen Burke visit 3 times that week, always bringing that cream, always insisting on applying it himself. The gesture that seemed so caring was actually, "Angela, you okay?" She looked up to find Maria, another housekeeper, watching her with concern. "Just tired," Angela replied. "That billionaire's room getting to you. I heard the doctors talking, 20 of them, and they can't figure out what's wrong with him. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? All that money and education, and death still comes knocking." "Yeah," Angela murmured. "Makes you wonder." But Angela wasn't wondering. She was remembering. Professor Hartley's toxicology class, second semester, before everything fell apart. They'd studied historical poisonings, the Borgia's Napoleon, and modern cases too. Thallium. The poisoner's poison, they called it. Colorless, odorless, tasteless. Slow-acting if administered in small doses. Symptoms that mimicked dozens of diseases. She waited until her shift ended, then, instead of going home, Angela made her way to the hospital's medical library. It was usually empty at this hour, just the way she liked it. She'd discovered it years ago, a quiet place to eat lunch and read to pretend for 30 minutes a day that she was still the promising chemistry student she'd once been. The toxicology textbooks were on the third shelf, dusty from lack of use. These days, everything was digital, but Angela had always preferred real books. She found what she was looking for in a volume from 2018, Heavy Metal Toxicology, a Clinical Guide. She flipped to the chapter on thallium, her heart pounding as she read, "Thallium poisoning presents with a constellation of symptoms that can mimic various diseases. Early symptoms include gastrointestinal distress, followed by peripheral neuropathy. The pathognomonic sign is alopecia hair loss, occurring 2 to 3 weeks after initial exposure. Mace's lines on the fingernails appear in chronic cases. Advanced poisoning results in multi-organ failure. Every symptom matched. Every single one." Angela photographed the pages with her phone, then found another book on forensic toxicology. This one detailed cases of deliberate poisoning. Thallium is particularly insidious as a murder weapon. Small, repeated doses can create the appearance of a mysterious illness. The victim appears to be dying of natural causes, while the perpetrator maintains close access, often positioning themselves as a caregiver. Her hands trembled as she read. Jefferson Burke, Victor's oldest friend, his business partner. The man who stood to inherit control of a $40 billion empire if Victor died without an heir. But how could she prove it? Who would believe her? She was nobody, a black woman with a mop and an unfinished degree. They were titans of medicine and industry. The very thought of approaching Dr. Whitmore with her theory made her stomach clench with anxiety. She thought of her mother dying in a charity ward because they couldn't afford better care. She thought of all the times she'd been invisible, dismissed, overlooked. But she also thought of Victor Blackwell dying by inches, while 20 brilliant doctors chased shadows. The next morning, Angela arrived at work early. She had a plan, not a great one, but it was all she had. She would collect evidence first, build an airtight case that even the most skeptical doctor couldn't dismiss. She started with the trash from Suite 4000. Wearing gloves, she carefully bagged the discarded containers of hand cream. If she could get them tested somehow. "What are you doing?" Angela spun around to find Dr. Jennifer Park, standing in the doorway, coffee in hand, looking curious rather than accusatory. "Just thorough cleaning, doctor," Angela stammered. Dr. Park stepped closer, her eyes sharp. "You're bagging medical waste separately. Why?" Angela's mind raced. This was it, her chance or her downfall. Dr. Park was the youngest of the doctors, maybe the most likely to listen, or the most likely to report her for overstepping. I notice things," Angela said carefully. "When you clean rooms for 15 years, you see patterns." "What kind of patterns?" Angela took a deep breath. "The kind that might explain what's killing Mr. Blackwell." Dr. Park's eyebrows shot up. "Excuse me? Please just hear me out. 5 minutes. That's all I ask." Dr. Park glanced at her watch, then back at Angela. Something in Angela's expression must have convinced her because she nodded. 5 minutes. Talk fast." Angela pulled out her phone, showing the photographed pages. "Thallium poisoning. Look at the symptoms. The hair loss, the nail changes, the peripheral neuropathy, the multi-organ failure. It matches everything." Dr. Park studied the images, her skepticism slowly morphing into interest. "We tested for heavy metals. Standard panels don't always detect thallium, especially if someone knows what they're doing. Small doses over time, and the hand cream missed her. Burke brings it every visit, insists on applying it himself. Thallium can be absorbed through the skin. That's a serious accusation. I know, but Mr. Blackwell is dying, and nothing else makes sense. Test the cream. Test his hair samples from 2 months ago. Thallium shows up in keratin. Please. Dr. Park was quiet for a long moment, processing. You said you noticed things. What else have you noticed? Angela thought carefully. Mr. Burke's visits increased about 3 months ago, right when Mr. Blackwell started getting sick. He always comes alone, always brings that cream. He's been pushing Mr. Blackwell to finalize some big business deal, even though Mr. Blackwell can barely stay conscious. And yesterday he was asking about power of attorney. Jesus, Dr. Park breathed. If you're right, if I'm right, Mr. Blackwell will be dead within days, and everyone will think it was natural causes. Dr. Park made a decision. Come with me. We need to talk to Dr. Whitmore. He won't listen to me. Maybe not, Dr. Park agreed. But he'll listen to me, and I'll make sure he knows this was your theory. Can you handle that? Angela thought of all the times she'd stayed quiet, stayed invisible. Yes, I can handle it. They found Dr. Whitmore in his office reviewing Victor's latest test results with 3 other doctors. He looked up, irritated at the interruption. Dr. Park, we're in the middle of... This is important, Dr. Park interrupted. Angela has a theory about Mr. Blackwell's condition. Dr. Whitmore's gaze shifted to Angela, and she saw the dismissal in his eyes before he even spoke. I'm sure housekeeping has valuable insights, but we're dealing with a complex medical thallium poisoning, Angela said, firmly, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. Chronic deliberate thallium poisoning. The room went silent. Dr. Chen laughed nervously. That's absurd. We tested for heavy metals. Did you specifically test for thallium? Angela challenged. Or did you run a standard panel? Dr. Whitmore's face reddened. Young woman, I don't know what you think you're... The Mies lines on his nails. Angela continued, refusing to back down now that she'd started. The specific pattern of hair loss. The peripheral neuropathy preceding the organ failure. The sweet metallic smell that's been in his room for months. It's textbook thallium poisoning, and it's being administered through the hand cream Jefferson Burke brings. This is ridiculous. Dr. Thompson scoffed. Jefferson Burke is Victor's oldest friend. And his sole beneficiary if Mr. Blackwell dies. Angela shot back. He's been increasing the doses. That's why Mr. Blackwell's decline has accelerated in the past 2 weeks. Dr. Whitmore stood up, his face a mask of controlled anger. Do you have any idea what you're suggesting? The legal implications. I'm suggesting you test the cream, Angela said simply. Test his hair samples from 2 months ago. Test specifically for thallium. If I'm wrong, you can have me fired. But if I'm right, and you do nothing, Mr. Blackwell will be dead by the end of the week. The doctors exchanged glances. Dr. Park stepped forward. She makes valid points about the symptoms. It would be negligent not to test for it. This is insane, Dr. Whitmore muttered, but Angela could see the doubt creeping in. Fine. We'll test for thallium. Specifically. But when this proves to be nonsense, it won't, Angela said quietly. The tests were ordered, immediately rushed, given the patient's deteriorating condition. Angela was told to go back to her duties, but she couldn't focus. She cleaned the same surfaces over and over, watching the clock, waiting. 3 hours later, chaos erupted in Suite 4000. Angela was mopping the hallway when she heard the commotion, doctors shouting, security being called, someone demanding lawyers. She pressed herself against the wall as Jefferson Burke was escorted past by 2 security guards. His face twisted with rage. This is ridiculous, he was shouting. I'll sue this hospital into bankruptcy. Victor is my friend. I would never. Dr. Whitmore appeared in the doorway of Suite 4000, his face pale. He spotted Angela and beckoned her over. The tests, he said quietly. Thallium levels 300 times normal. The cream was laced with it. We've started chelation therapy, but—" He paused, struggling with the words. "How did you know?" "Chemistry major," Angela replied. "Before life got in the way, I remembered the symptoms from toxicology class. You saved his life. If we'd waited another day, maybe two—" Angela felt her knees go weak with relief. "Will he recover?" "Too early to tell. The damage is extensive. But he has a chance now, because of you." Dr. Whitmore studied her for a moment. "I owe you an apology. I dismissed you because, well, because of who I thought you were. That was wrong." "You're not the first," Angela said simply. "Won't be the last." But Dr. Whitmore shook his head. "No, you don't understand. Victor Blackwell is awake. He wants to see you." Angela's heart skipped. She followed Dr. Whitmore into the suite where Victor lay propped up on pillows, looking more alert than he had in weeks. The chelation ivory dripped steadily into his arm, already working to pull the poison from his system. "You're Angela," he said, his voice still weak but clearer. "They tell me you're the one who figured it out." "I just noticed some things," Angela said, uncomfortable with the attention. 20 doctors. Victor said, a wry smile playing at his lips. 20 of the best doctors money could buy, and it was the housekeeper who saved my life. He laughed, then winced as it turned into a cough. "Do you know what I love about that?" Angela shook her head. "It's exactly the kind of thing that would happen in one of those movies my ex-wife used to make me watch. The underdog saves the day. Except this is real life, and you actually did save my life." His expression grew serious. "Dr. Whitmore tells me you studied chemistry." 2 years, Angela admitted. "Before my mother got sick." "And you've been cleaning this hospital for 15 years. "It's honest work," Angela said defensively. "I'm not criticizing. I'm admiring. 15 years of being invisible, underestimated, and you never stopped observing, never stopped thinking. That's remarkable." Victor shifted slightly, grimacing with pain. "Tell me, what would you do if you could finish that degree?" Angela was taken aback. I don't know. It's been so long since I thought it was possible." "Think about it now," Victor insisted. "Dream a little. What would Angela Bowmont, Ph.D., do with her life?" Despite everything, Angela smiled. "Forensic chemistry, maybe. Or toxicology research. Help catch the bad guys, or stop them before they hurt anyone." "Interesting," Victor murmured. He looked at Dr. Whitmore. "Can you give us a moment?" The doctor hesitated, then nodded, leaving them alone. "Jefferson and I have been friends since college," Victor said quietly. 40 years. He was the best man at my wedding. Godfather to my son before—" He trailed off, pain that had nothing to do with poison crossing his face. "My son died in a car accident 5 years ago. Jeff was there for me through all of it. I trusted him with everything." "I'm sorry," Angela said, not knowing what else to say. "The police tell me he's been planning this for 2 years. Ever since I refused to take the company public. He wanted to cash out, become liquid. I wanted to keep building. Apparently that disagreement was worth killing me over." Victor's hands clenched into fists. 40 years of friendship, and he watched me dying by inches, bringing me poison with a smile. "People can surprise you," Angela said softly. "Not always in good ways." Victor studied her. "But sometimes in the best ways. Like you." He reached for a notepad on his bedside table, scribbling something with a shaking hand. "This is my direct line. When I get out of here, and I will get out of here thanks to you, we're going to talk about your future. That chemistry degree is just the start." Angela took the paper, hardly believing this was happening. "Mr. Blackwell, I don't need—" "It's not charity," Victor interrupted. "It's an investment. In someone who sees what others miss. That's a rare gift, Angela. Too rare to waste on mopping floors, no offense to the floors." Before Angela could respond, the door burst open. FBI agents flooded in, followed by lawyers and more security. The next few hours were a whirlwind of statements, evidence collection, and questions. Angela told her story over and over to the FBI, to the police, to the district attorney's office. Each time she saw the same progression of skepticism to interest to amazement. By the time her shift officially ended, the story had leaked to the press. Reporters crowded the hospital entrance, shouting questions about the mystery woman who had solved the case. Angela slipped out through a service entrance the way she always did, invisible once more. But when she arrived at work the next morning, everything had changed. The other housekeepers looked at her differently, with respect, even awe. The doctors who had ignored her for years suddenly knew her name. And in Suite 4000, Victor Blackwell was sitting up, color returning to his cheeks, very much alive. "Angela," he called out when he saw her. Come in. I want you to meet someone." A woman in an expensive suit stood beside Victor's bed. His lawyer, Angela, guessed. "This is Margaret Chen, my attorney," Victor confirmed. "Margaret, this is the woman who saved my life and solved a case that 20 doctors couldn't crack." Margaret extended her hand. "Ms. Bowmont, I've been instructed to set up an educational trust in your name, full tuition, living expenses, and a stipend for any university of your choice." Angela's legs nearly gave out. What? "You're going back to school," Victor said firmly, "to finish what you started. And when you graduate, there's a position waiting for you at Blackwell Industries if you want it. We're expanding into biomedical research. We could use someone with your particular combination of skills. But you're just the woman who saw what everyone else missed," Victor interrupted. "Who had the courage to speak up when it mattered? Who saved my life? So please stop saying you're just anything." Angela felt tears burning her eyes. 15 years of being invisible, of accepting her place, of believing her dreams were dead, and suddenly, everything was possible again. "There's more," Margaret said, pulling out another document. "Mr. Burke's assets have been frozen pending trial. Mr. Blackwell is establishing a foundation for students whose education was interrupted by circumstances beyond their control. He'd like you to be on the board." "A foundation?" Victor nodded. "The Angela Bowmont Foundation for Interrupted Dreams. We'll help people like you, people with brilliant minds who just need a second chance. What do you think?" Angela sank into a chair, overwhelmed. I think you're crazy." Victor laughed, a real laugh, free of pain for the first time in months. "Maybe, but I'm alive to be crazy thanks to you." Over the next weeks, as Victor recovered and Burke's trial began, Angela found herself at the center of a media storm. The story was irresistible: the billionaire, the betrayal, the housekeeper who solved it all. But Angela stayed focused on what mattered. She enrolled at Columbia, picking up where she'd left off 15 years ago. It wasn't easy, the chemistry had advanced, and she was older than most of her classmates, but she persevered. Dr. Park became a mentor, helping her navigate the academic world she'd been locked out of for so long. Dr. Whitmore, humbled by his initial dismissal, offered to write her recommendation letters for graduate school. Even some of the other housekeepers at the hospital started taking night classes, inspired by Angela's story. The trial was sensational. Jefferson Burke, faced with overwhelming evidence, eventually pleaded guilty to attempted murder. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison. During his allocution, he broke down crying, claiming business pressures and financial desperation had driven him to it. Victor, watching from the gallery, showed no emotion. The betrayal had cut too deep for forgiveness. But there was one moment during the trial that stood out to Angela. When she was called to testify, she walked to the witness stand in a new suit that Victor had insisted on buying for her. As she raised her hand to take the oath, she saw them all, 20 doctors who had worked on Victor's case, sitting in the gallery. Dr. Whitmore gave her an encouraging nod. Dr. Park smiled. Dr. Chen mouthed, "Thank you." "State your name for the record," the prosecutor said. "Angela Bowmont." She replied, her voice strong and clear. "And what is your occupation?" Angela paused, thinking of how to answer. For 15 years, the answer would have been simple housekeeper. But now, "I'm a chemistry student at Columbia University," she said, "and a consultant for Blackwell Industries' new biomedical division." As she gave her testimony explaining how she'd recognized the signs of thallium poisoning, Angela realized something. She hadn't just saved Victor Blackwell's life. She'd saved her own too. For years, she'd accepted invisibility as her fate, had believed her dreams were a luxury she couldn't afford. But sometimes being invisible meant you could see things others couldn't. Sometimes the person with the mop was the only one looking at the floor where all the pieces had fallen. 6 months later, Angela stood in a laboratory at Columbia, working on her senior thesis project, a new detection method for heavy metal poisoning that could be implemented in emergency rooms. Victor had offered to fund the research, and several hospitals had already expressed interest. Her phone buzzed with a text from Victor. "Saw the news about your research grant. Proud of you. Dinner Thursday to celebrate." Angela smiled. They'd developed an unlikely friendship over the months. The billionaire and the former housekeeper bonded by a near tragedy and mutual respect. Victor often said she'd saved his life, but Angela knew the truth was more complex. They'd saved each other. He'd given her back her dreams, and she'd given him something even more valuable, the knowledge that brilliance could come from anywhere, that the people we overlook might be the ones who see everything. The laboratory at Columbia hummed with activity as Angela carefully prepared her samples, but her mind kept drifting back to that Thursday dinner with Victor. He'd been different lately, more intense, more focused on her research than his own recovery. The way he'd gripped her hand when they'd said goodbye, the urgency in his voice when he'd said, "Be careful, Angela. Not everyone wants the truth to come out." She'd dismissed it as paranoia, a lingering effect of Burke's betrayal. She should have listened. The first sign of trouble came 3 weeks after Burke's sentencing. Angela was working late in the lab when she noticed her samples had been disturbed. Nothing obvious, just a few vials slightly out of place. A notebook moved half an inch from where she'd left it. Old habits from 15 years of meticulous cleaning had given her an almost photographic memory for object placement. "You're being paranoid," she told herself, but her hands shook as she checked her research notes. Everything was there, but something felt wrong. Dr. Park found her the next morning, still in the lab, surrounded by security footage printouts. "Angela, have you been here all night?" "Someone was in here," Angela said, not looking up from the grainy images. "Between 2 and 3 a.m. See the shadow by the door, but the security system shows no entry." Dr. Park frowned, studying the footage. "That could be anything, a trick of the light." "The same trick that moved my samples." "You think someone's trying to sabotage your research?" Angela finally looked up, exhaustion etched on her face. "I think Jefferson Burke had friends. Business partners who lost money when his scheme failed. People who might not want a detection method that makes poisoning harder to get away with." Dr. Park sat down beside her. "Angela, you need to be careful. If you're right, if I'm right, I'm in danger whether I'm careful or not." That afternoon, Victor called her personally. "I heard about the lab incident." "How did you never mind?" Angela had learned not to question Victor's information network. "It's probably nothing." "Nothing doesn't require someone to hack our security system," Victor said grimly. "I'm assigning you protection." "I don't need a bodyguard." "It's not negotiable. Angela Burke had partners we haven't identified yet. The FBI investigation is ongoing. Your research threatens a lot of people who make money from untraceable poisons." "You mean pharmaceutical companies?" "I mean whoever's willing to kill to protect their interests." Victor's voice softened. "You saved my life. Let me protect yours." The bodyguard's name was Marcus Stone, 6'4" former Navy SEAL with eyes that never stopped scanning for threats. Angela hated having him shadow her, hated the way other students stared, hated feeling like a victim. But 3 days later, when a car tried to run her down in a crosswalk, Marcus was the one who pulled her back, saving her life by inches. Coincidence? Marcus asked, helping her to her feet as the car sped away. Angela's heart hammered against her ribs. No plates. Stolen, probably. We need to call the police. And tell them that someone maybe tried to kill me because I'm developing a poison detection method. Angela laughed bitterly. They'll think I'm paranoid. But Victor didn't think she was paranoid. Within hours, he'd hired a private investigation firm to dig deeper into Burke's connections. What they found sent chills down Angela's spine. Burke wasn't working alone, Victor told her in his office, sliding a folder across his desk. He was part of a network. They call themselves the Cleaners. They specialize in untraceable eliminations for hire, corporate executives, political rivals, inconvenient spouses. Angela opened the folder, scanning the documents. Names, dates, suspicious deaths, ruled natural causes. This is huge. And you're the one who exposed them. Your detection method doesn't just threaten their future operations. It could expose their past ones. Every mysterious illness in the past decade could be re-examined. So they want me dead. They want you silenced, Victor corrected. Dead is just one option. As if on cue, Angela's phone buzzed. An unknown number, a simple message. Drop the research or drop dead. Marcus immediately took the phone, already calling his contacts to trace the number. But Angela knew they wouldn't find anything. These people were professionals. Maybe I should stop, Angela said quietly. It's just research. It's not worth dying for. Victor's eyes blazed. You don't mean that. Don't I? I'm a chemistry student, not a soldier. I didn't sign up for this. No, Victor agreed. You signed up to clean hospital rooms. But when you saw something wrong, you spoke up. You saved my life when 20 doctors couldn't. You think that was coincidence? You have a gift, Angela, a responsibility. Easy for you to say. You're a billionaire with an army of security. And 3 months ago, I was dying while my best friend poisoned me with a smile. Victor's voice hardened. Evil wins when good people stay silent. You taught me that. Angela wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. She thought of all the victims in that folder, all the families who'd never gotten justice, never even known they needed it. Fine, she said. But we do this smart. No more late nights alone in the lab. No predictable routines. Agreed. And there's something else. Victor hesitated. The FBI wants your help, officially. What? They're reopening 17 cold cases based on your research. They need someone who can spot what others miss, someone who understands both the chemistry and the human element. Angela felt the world shifting beneath her feet again. I'm not qualified. You're the only one who is qualified, Victor interrupted. You've lived it. You've seen it. You stopped it. Special Agent Diana Foster was nothing like Angela had expected. Petite, sharp-eyed, with a slight southern drawl that made her seem approachable until you noticed the way she cataloged every detail of her surroundings. Ms. Bowmont, she said, shaking Angela's hand firmly. I've been following your case since the beginning. Impressive work. I just noticed some things. You just revolutionized forensic toxicology, Foster corrected. Your detection method could solve cases we've had cold for years. But first, we need to keep you alive. That's reassuring. Foster smiled grimly. The Cleaners have operated for at least 15 years that we know of. Dozens of victims, maybe hundreds. Burke was middle management. We want the leaders. And you think they'll come after me? I think they already have. That car wasn't a warning. It was a failed attempt. They'll try again, but this time we'll be ready. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Angela would continue her research, maintaining her routine, making herself a target. Meanwhile, the FBI would monitor everyone who showed interest in her work, tracking financial connections, communication patterns, building a web of evidence. "You want me to be bait," Angela said flatly. "I want you to be yourself," Foster replied. "Brilliant, determined, and apparently impossible to kill." Angela laughed despite herself. 15 years of hospital cleaning builds up your immune system. And your observation skills. We could use someone like you know, after you finish your degree. The FBI, I mean. One life-threatening situation at a time, please. But as the weeks passed, Angela found herself drawn to the investigation. She worked with Foster to analyze the cold cases, finding patterns others had missed. A diplomat in Brussels whose heart attack showed signs of digitalis poisoning. A tech executive in Silicon Valley whose stroke followed exposure to a synthetic neurotoxin. A senator's wife whose cancer progressed with suspicious regularity after each visit from her personal trainer. They're all connected. Angela realized one evening, mapping out the cases on a whiteboard in Foster's office. Look at the timing. Each death benefited someone in a position to influence international trade agreements. Foster studied the board. "You're suggesting this is about more than money. It's about power, control." Burke wasn't just trying to take over Victor's company. He was being paid to deliver it to specific buyers. Chinese pharmaceutical giants with ties to chemical weapons research. That's a serious accusation. It's a pattern. Every victim was either blocking a deal or refusing to sell technology that could be weaponized. Foster was quiet for a moment. "If you're right, this goes all the way to international intelligence agencies. Then we better be very careful who we trust." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Maria, the housekeeper Angela had worked with for years, called her one-night voice, trembling with fear. "Angela, I need to talk to you. About Mr. Burke." They met in a diner in Queens Marcus, stationed at the door, Foster listening through a wire Angela wore. "I saw something," Maria said, clutching her coffee cup. "A few months before Mr. Blackwell got sick, Mr. Burke was talking to someone in the parking garage. I was taking out trash, they didn't see me." "What did you hear?" "They were arguing about timing. The other man said it was too soon, that people would get suspicious. Mr. Burke said he didn't care, that Blackwell was getting too close to the truth." "The truth about what?" Maria pulled out a phone, hands shaking. "I recorded it. I don't know why. Maybe because Mr. Burke had always been so rude to us, treating us like we weren't even human. I thought maybe someday I could use it to get him fired." She laughed bitterly. "I never imagined." Angela listened to the recording, her blood running cold. The voice arguing with Burke was familiar. She'd heard it recently in Victor's hospital room. Dr. Richard Steinberg, the specialist from Berlin. "Foster," she whispered into her wire, "we have a problem." Steinberg wasn't just a doctor. He was the cleaners' medical advisor, the one who helped them choose undetectable poisons, who provided legitimate medical cover for their victims. He'd been in Victor's room not to help, but to ensure the poison was working to steer the investigation away from the truth. "He's probably halfway to Germany by now," Foster said when they regrouped at the FBI office. "No," Angela said. "He's arrogant. He thinks he's untouchable. He'll be at the medical conference tomorrow at Mount Sinai. He's giving a presentation on diagnostic mysteries." Foster smiled. "Then let's give him a mystery he won't forget." The plan required Angela to take a massive risk. She would attend the conference, confront Steinberg publicly with evidence of his involvement. The FBI would be there ready to arrest him, but for a few crucial moments, Angela would be exposed vulnerable. "I don't like it," Marcus said. "Too many variables." "It's our best shot," Angela insisted. "He won't expect me to be there. To him, I'm still just the invisible housekeeper." Victor offered to come with her, but Angela refused. "This is something I need to do myself." The conference hall was packed with hundreds of doctors from around the world. Angela sat in the back row, her heart pounding as Steinberg took the stage. He was confident, charismatic, describing cases where traditional medicine had failed to identify mysterious illnesses. Sometimes, he said, the answer is right in front of us, but we're too educated to see it. We overthink, overanalyze when the solution is simple. Is that why you missed the thallium poisoning? Angela called out, standing up. Every head in the room turned to her. Steinberg's face went pale, then red with anger. I'm sorry, do you have a question? I have several, Angela said, walking down the aisle toward the stage. Like why you specifically steered the diagnostic team away from testing for heavy metals. Why you insisted on experimental treatments that would have masked the poisoning symptoms. Why you met with Jefferson Burke 3 times in the month before Victor Blackwell was admitted. This is highly inappropriate. So is murdering patients for profit, Angela shot back. Or should I say helping to murder them while pretending to save them? Security guards moved toward her, but Foster's agents intercepted them, badges flashing. The room erupted in chaos as Steinberg tried to flee, only to be caught at the exit by more FBI agents. Dr. Richard Steinberg, Foster announced, her voice cutting through the noise. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, international racketeering, and violation of medical ethics so severe they'll need to invent new laws just for you. As they led Steinberg away, he turned to Angela, his face twisted with rage. You have no idea what you've done. The people I work for, they don't forgive. They don't forget. Neither do I, Angela replied quietly. The arrest made international headlines. Housekeeper turned hero exposes international murder ring. From mop to microscope, the Angela Bowmont story. The invisible woman who sees everything. But Angela barely noticed the media attention. She was focused on the investigation, working 18-hour days with Foster's team to decode Steinberg's files. What they found was staggering: a network spanning 15 countries, hundreds of deaths, billions in illegal profits. This is going to take years to unravel, Foster told her one evening as they reviewed documents. Then I better finish my degree quickly, Angela replied. You're going to need all the help you can get. Victor's recovery continued steadily, though the thallium had left permanent damage. He walked with a cane. Now his hands trembled occasionally, but his mind remained sharp as ever. He'd turned his near-death experience into purpose-funding research into poison detection and treatment, establishing clinics in underserved communities. You changed my life, he told Angela over dinner one evening. Not just by saving it, but by showing me what I'd been blind to. All those years I walked past people like you, never seeing, never valuing. I was poisoned by more than thallium. We all have our blind spots, Angela said gently. Yes, but some of us need them forcibly opened. He raised his glass of water. Alcohol was forbidden with his medications. To seeing clearly. To seeing what others miss, Angela countered. As her senior year progressed, Angela juggled coursework, FBI consulting, and her ongoing research. The detection method she'd developed was being fast-tracked for FDA approval, with hospitals across the country eager to implement it. But the cleaners hadn't given up. The attacks became subtler, attempted hacks of her research data. Bribes offered to her colleagues to sabotage her work, whisper campaigns suggesting her findings were fraudulent. They're trying to discredit you, Foster warned. Make you seem unreliable, unstable. Let them try, Angela said. I've been invisible for 15 years. I know how to be patient. The patience paid off. One of the bribe attempts was made to Dr. Park, who immediately reported it to the FBI. The trail led to a Swiss bank account, then to a shell company in the Caymans, and finally to the real power behind the cleaners, a consortium of pharmaceutical executives and arms dealers who'd been using medical murder as a tool for industrial espionage. We got them, Foster announced one morning, bursting into Angela's lab. All of them. Arrests are happening simultaneously in 12 countries. Angela set down her test tube carefully, her hands suddenly shaking. It's over. This part is. But Angela, what you've built here, this detection system, this methodology, it's going to save thousands of lives. You've changed forensic science forever. "I just noticed some patterns," Angela said, her standard response. "No," Foster said firmly. "You saw injustice and refused to look away. That's not nothing. That's everything." The graduation ceremony was held on a perfect May afternoon. Angela sat with her fellow chemistry graduates, no longer feeling out of place among the younger students. She'd earned her spot here, earned it twice over. Victor was in the audience along with Foster Dr. Park Marcus, and surprisingly, Maria and several other housekeepers from the hospital. "We wanted to see you walk," Maria had said simply. "To see one of us make it." When they called her name, Angela Bowmont, Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, summa cum laude with special recognition for contributions to forensic science, the applause was thunderous. But it was after the ceremony, as Angela stood in her cap and gown, surrounded by people who'd once been invisible to her world, and those who'd once been invisible to theirs, that the real moment came. A young woman approached, hesitantly wearing a hospital service uniform. "Ms. Beaumont, I'm Keisha. I work at Presbyterian in housekeeping. I just wanted to say, I'm starting night school next month. Chemistry. Because of you. Because you showed us we don't have to stay invisible." Angela felt tears spring to her eyes. "You were never invisible. You were just waiting for your moment to be seen. Like you were, like we all are," Angela said, looking at the crowd of graduates, families, professors. "Every single one of us has something unique to contribute. Sometimes it just takes the right moment, the right circumstance for that contribution to become visible." As the sun set over the Columbia campus, Angela thought about the journey that had brought her here. From mopping hospital floors, to solving attempted murder, from being dismissed, to being desperately needed, from accepting invisibility, to demanding to be seen. The Angela Bowmont Foundation had already approved scholarships for 50 students whose education had been interrupted. The FBI had offered her a permanent position as a forensic consultant. 3 universities were competing to accept her into their graduate programs. But standing there watching Keisha walk away with new purpose in her stride, Angela realized her greatest achievement wasn't the degree or the solved case or the international headlines. It was proving that brilliance doesn't always come from where we expect it. That the person pushing the mop might be the one who sees the crucial detail everyone else misses. That invisibility, painful as it is, can sometimes be a superpower if you're brave enough to finally step into the light. The call came at 3 in the morning, 6 months after graduation. Angela was in her new apartment, the one Victor had insisted she accept as a graduation gift, when her secure FBI phone lit up with Foster's number. "We have a problem," Foster said without preamble. "Jefferson Burke is dead." Angela sat up, instantly alert. "When?" "2 hours ago. Prison infirmary. They're calling it suicide, but you don't believe it." He was about to testify. "Names, dates, the entire network we haven't caught yet. He contacted me yesterday, said he had information about something bigger than the cleaners." Angela was already getting dressed, her mind racing. "He was murdered." "That's what I need you to help me prove. How fast can you get to Rikers?" The prison at night was a different world from the hospital Angela knew so well, but the smell of industrial disinfectant was the same, that sharp chemical bite that now always made her think of hidden dangers. Burke's body was still in the infirmary, waiting for the medical examiner. "The guards found him at midnight cell check," the warden explained, clearly uncomfortable with the FBI presence. "Hanging. Used his bedsheet." Angela studied the scene, noting every detail. The knot, the position of the body, the marks on his neck. Something was wrong, but she couldn't quite place it. "Can I see his cell?" she asked. The warden looked at Foster, who nodded. They walked through endless corridors, the sound of their footsteps echoing off concrete walls. Burke's cell was small, sparse, nothing like the luxury he'd been accustomed to. Angela examined everything. The bed, the small desk, the toilet, the single shelf with a few books. Then she saw it so small, anyone else would have missed it. A single drop of blood on the spine of a book about ancient Rome. "He was reading when they came for him," she said quietly. Paper cut maybe, or a bloody nose. But this blood is fresh, maybe 6 hours old. The guard said he'd been dead at least 4 hours when they found him. Foster said, understanding immediately. He couldn't have been reading 2 hours before he died if he was already dead. Someone moved the body, staged the suicide after killing him elsewhere. The warden's face went pale. That's impossible. We have cameras protocols. You have guards who can be bought, Angela said bluntly, just like Burke bought his way into Victor's life. Foster was already on her phone calling for a full forensics team. But Angela knew they were dealing with professionals. Whoever killed Burke had been planning this for weeks, maybe months. He kept a journal, the warden offered suddenly. Insisted on it. Said it was for his memoirs. We have it in evidence. The journal was filled with Burke's neat handwriting documenting his days in prison, his regrets, his plans for testimony. But the last entry dated yesterday was different. The handwriting was shaky, urgent. They know I'm going to talk. The architect knows. If something happens to me, look for the Mercury Protocol. Angela Bowmont will understand. She sees what others miss. The Mercury Protocol. Foster frowned. What's that? Angela's blood ran cold. Mercury. Another heavy metal. Another poison. It's not a what, she said slowly. It's a who. Someone called the architect has been using mercury poisoning, but in a way we haven't seen before. She thought back to her research, to all the cases they'd reviewed. There had been outliers' deaths that didn't fit the cleaner's usual pattern. More sophisticated, more elegant, almost artistic in their execution. We need to review every mysterious death in the past 5 years involving neurological symptoms, Angela said, but specifically looking for organic mercury compounds, not just elemental mercury. That's thousands of cases. Then we better get started. They set up in a conference room at FBI headquarters, surrounded by files, computers, and enough coffee to fuel a small army. Angela worked alongside a team of analysts, but it was her eyes that caught the pattern others missed. Here, she said, after 18 straight hours of searching. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, neurologist, died 2 years ago, diagnosed with ALS, but the progression was unusual. She pulled up another file. Mark Rodriguez, EPA inspector, died last year, also diagnosed with ALS. Another file. Senator Patricia Webb died 6 months ago. Also ALS, Foster guessed. No, Parkinson's. But look at the timeline. All three were investigating the same company, MedTech Dynamics. They produce medical equipment, but they have a subsidiary that handles chemical waste disposal. Foster leaned forward. Burke's company had contracts with MedTech. More than contracts. Burke was on their board of directors. And guess who else is on that board? Angela pulled up a corporate filing. Dr. Richard Steinberg. He's in federal custody. But the architect isn't. Angela stood up, pacing now, pieces falling into place. Think about it. The cleaners were messy obvious once you knew what to look for. But these deaths, these were art, made to look like natural neurological diseases. No one would ever suspect murder. Except you. Except someone who spent their life seeing what others miss. Angela corrected. Foster, we need to exhume those bodies. The legal battles took 3 weeks. Families had to be convinced, judges persuaded, paperwork filed in triplicate. But finally, Angela stood in the medical examiner's office as Dr. Hayes's body was prepared for examination. What exactly are we looking for? The ME asked. Methylmercury, Angela replied. But not in the usual places. The architect would have been clever. Look for injection sites in places that would be overlooked, between the toes, under the hairline, maybe even dental work. The ME worked methodically and then suddenly stopped. Here, base of the skull hidden by the hairline. Tiny puncture mark, almost completely healed. That's it. Test the brain tissue around that area. The results came back positive. Massive levels of methylmercury concentrated in a way that would mimic natural neurological degeneration. The same was found in Rodriguez and Webb. "This changes everything," Foster said. "These weren't just murders. They were assassinations targeting people who threatened MedTech's operations. And the architect is still out there," Angela added. "Burke knew who it was. That's why he had to die." Victor had been following the investigation from his office, using his resources to help where he could. When Angela briefed him on their findings, his face darkened. "MedTech Dynamics. I know them. They tried to buy my company 3 years ago. When I refused, things started happening. Small things, contracts falling through suppliers, having problems, key employees getting sick." He paused. "My son's car accident happened a week after I gave them a final no." Angela felt her heart stop. "Victor, are you saying—" "I'm saying my son died on a clear day on a straight road he'd driven 1,000 times when his car suddenly veered off into a tree. The autopsy showed he'd had a seizure, but he had no history of epilepsy." "Mercury can cause seizures." "Yes," Victor said quietly. "It can." The investigation suddenly became personal for both of them. Angela threw herself into the work with renewed intensity, tracking financial records, chemical purchases, travel patterns. She was getting close, she could feel it. Then Marcus saved her life for the second time. She was leaving the FBI building late one evening when he suddenly pushed her back inside his hand, going to his weapon. "Silver sedan tinted windows been circling the block for an hour," he said tersely. The car accelerated toward them, window rolling down. Marcus moved before the gun appeared, covering Angela with his body as bullets shattered the glass doors. The gunfire lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. When it was over, Marcus was bleeding from a graze on his arm, but alive. The sedan was gone, leaving only shell casings and the smell of cordite. "They're getting desperate," Foster said when she arrived on scene. "You're close to something." "Close isn't enough," Angela said, her hands still shaking. "People are dying." That night, unable to sleep, Angela went back to Burke's journal. She read every entry, looking for clues, patterns, anything. And then, in an entry from 3 months ago, she found it. The architect visited today, still wearing that ridiculous ring, the one with the mercury. Fitting, I suppose. We're all poisoners here, just some more elegant than others. A ring with mercury. Angela thought about everyone she'd met connected to this case, and then she remembered a flash of silver, a distinctive design, a hand reaching out to shake hers at Victor's first board meeting after his recovery. "Oh my God," she whispered. She called Foster immediately. "It's Charlotte Morrison, MedTech's CEO." "That's impossible. She's been cooperating with the investigation." "She's been controlling it," Angela corrected. "Think about it. She knew exactly what we were looking for because she was right there helping us look. She could steer us away from the real evidence." Angela Charlotte Morrison is one of the most respected executives in the country. She's on the President's Council for Medical Innovation. And she's the architect. I saw her ring. It's a vintage piece, probably from the 1920s. They used to make jewelry with mercury back then, before they knew it was dangerous. Or maybe she knew exactly how dangerous it was. Foster was quiet for a moment. "We need proof. Real, solid proof. Then we need to get into her office. Tonight, before she knows we suspect her." The plan was dangerous, possibly illegal, definitely career-ending if they were wrong. But Angela had learned to trust her instincts, and every instinct screamed that Charlotte Morrison was the architect. They waited until midnight, then used FBI credentials to access the MedTech building. Morrison's office was on the top floor, a glass and steel testament to corporate power. "What are we looking for?" Foster whispered as they searched. "I don't know, but I'll recognize it when I see it." And she did. Hidden behind a false panel in Morrison's desk was a small laboratory, test tubes, syringes, and a collection of mercury compounds that would make any chemist nervous. "This is it," Angela breathed. This is where she prepared the doses. But there was more. Files, hundreds of them detailing targets, methods, payments. The Mercury Protocol wasn't just about assassination. It was about corporate control, eliminating obstacles to medtech's expansion. "Foster," Angela said, her voice shaking. "There's a current target file." Foster looked over her shoulder, and both women gasped. The photo was of Angela herself, with detailed notes about her routines, her vulnerabilities, her relationships. And at the bottom, a single line. "Termination approved. Method: acute mercury vapor exposure. Make it look like a lab accident." "We need to get out of here," Foster said. "Now." But as they turned to leave, the lights flicked on. Charlotte Morrison stood in the doorway, elegant even at midnight, a small silver gun in her manicured hand. "Ms. Bowmont," she said pleasantly. "I should have known. You do have a talent for seeing what others miss." "Like the fact that you're a serial killer," Angela shot back. Morrison laughed. "Serial killer? How pedestrian. I'm an artist, a sculptor of fate. I remove obstacles with precision and elegance. Your friend Burke, he was a butcher. Thallium so crude. You killed him. I silenced him. There's a difference. He was about to expose something far bigger than the cleaners. A network that's been shaping global medical policy for decades. Deciding who lives, who dies, which treatments get approved, which get buried." "The Mercury Protocol," Angela said. "Among others. Mercury, lead, cadmium. Each has its place, its purpose. We've been perfecting the art for generations. My grandmother started it, you know. During the war, helping the Allies eliminate problematic figures without firing a shot. And you've turned it into a business." "I've turned it into an empire," Morrison corrected, "one that you've significantly damaged. Do you have any idea how much your little detection method has cost us?" "Not as much as it's about to," Foster said, and Angela realized she'd been recording the entire conversation. Morrison's composure finally cracked. "You think that matters? You think anyone will believe you? I own judges, senators, entire regulatory bodies. You're a nobody with a chemistry degree and delusions of grandeur." "She's the woman who brought down the cleaners," Victor said from behind Morrison. Morrison spun around to find Victor standing with a dozen FBI agents, all with weapons drawn. "Hello, Charlotte," Victor continued calmly. "You killed my son." "I eliminated a potential problem," Morrison replied, her voice cold. "He was investigating our waste disposal sites. He would have exposed everything. He was 23 years old. He was a threat." Victor's hand tightened on his cane, but his voice remained steady. "And now you're surrounded by FBI agents, your confession recorded, your laboratory documented. I'd say you're the one who's been eliminated." Morrison looked around, calculating odds, then suddenly raised her gun toward Angela. "If I'm going down, I'm taking her with me." The shot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space, but it wasn't Morrison's gun that fired. Marcus, who'd been shadowing them unseen, had taken the shot that saved Angela's life for the third time. Morrison crumpled to the floor, her silver gun clattering away. "Clear!" Foster shouted, agents flooding the room. "We need medical now." But Angela was already kneeling beside Morrison, her training taking over. Despite everything, she couldn't just watch someone die. The irony. Morrison gasped, blood spreading across her designer suit. "Being saved by the woman I tried to kill." "I'm not saving you," Angela said quietly. "I'm just keeping you alive long enough to face justice." Morrison laughed, then coughed. "There is no justice, only power, and those too weak to seek it." "You're wrong," Angela said. "Justice is what happens when someone finally sees the truth you've been hiding." Morrison's eyes flickered. The truth. "The truth is that we're everywhere. The Mercury Protocol was just one tentacle of something much larger. You've won a battle, Ms. Beaumont, but the war—" She coughed again. "The war never ends." The paramedics arrived, taking Morrison away. She would survive barely to spend the rest of her life in federal prison, but her words echoed in Angela's mind. The next months were a whirlwind of trials, testimony, and revelations. The Mercury Protocol investigation exposed a network of corporate assassinations spanning 30 years and 6 continents. Hundreds of deaths were re-examined, families finally given answers. Angela became the star witness, her testimony precise, devastating, undeniable. She sat in courtroom after courtroom explaining the chemistry of murder, the patterns everyone had missed, the invisible connections that had allowed killers to operate in plain sight. "How did you see what trained investigators missed?" one defense attorney asked, trying to discredit her. "Because I was trained to see what others ignore," Angela replied simply. 15 years of cleaning up after people teaches you to notice what they leave behind. The conviction rate was unprecedented. Morrison and 17 co-conspirators were sentenced to life in prison. MedTech Dynamics was dissolved, its assets distributed to victims' families. New regulations were passed, including mandatory testing protocols based on Angela's detection method. But for Angela, the real victory came in a quiet moment, 6 months after Morrison's arrest. She was in her new office at the FBI. She'd finally accepted Foster's offer of a permanent position when Keisha, the young housekeeper, who'd approached her at graduation, knocked on the door. "Ms. Beaumont, Dr. Beaumont." "Just Angela," she said warmly. "And it's not doctor yet, I'm still working on my PhD. I wanted to show you something." Keisha held out a paper, an acceptance letter to Columbia's chemistry program. "Full scholarship, from your foundation." Angela felt tears spring to her eyes. "Keisha, this is wonderful." "There's more. 17 of us from the hospital got accepted to various programs. We started a study group calling ourselves The Visible. Because you taught us we don't have to hide." That evening, Angela stood in Victor's office, looking out at the city lights. He'd aged in the past year, the combined toll of poisoning and grief finally showing. But his eyes were clear, determined. "I've been thinking about what Morrison said," he said. "About the war never ending." "You think she was right?" "I think there will always be people willing to kill for power. But now there are also people like you, willing to see the truth, no matter how well it's hidden." He turned to her. "I want to expand the foundation. Not just scholarships, but research centers, training programs. Create an army of people who see what others miss." "That's ambitious." "So was a housekeeper thinking she could solve a billionaire's murder," Victor pointed out. "How did that work out?" Angela smiled. "Pretty well, actually." "Then let's do it again. Bigger, better. Create a legacy that Morrison and her kind can never destroy." They shook hands, two unlikely allies bound by poison and purpose. As Angela walked home that night, Marcus beside her as always, he'd refused to be reassigned, claiming she was a trouble magnet who needed constant supervision. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. From invisible housekeeper to FBI consultant, from chemistry dropout to doctoral candidate, from nobody to somebody who'd brought down 2 international murder conspiracies. But she also thought about Morrison's words about the war that never ends. There would be other architects, other protocols, other poisons. The work would never be finished. Her phone buzzed with a text from Foster. New case. 3 deaths in Seattle, all diagnosed as rare genetic disorders. But the victims were adopted, no biological relation. Sound familiar? Angela smiled grimly. On my way, she texted back. Because this was who she was, now the woman who saw what others missed, who spoke for the silenced, who found patterns in chaos. She'd been forged in 15 years of invisibility, tempered by betrayal and violence, and emerged as something unprecedented, a guardian of the unseen truths, a voice for the voiceless dead. The war might never end, but Angela Bowmont would be there fighting it, one invisible clue at a time. And somewhere in a hospital in New York, A young woman pushing a mop might notice something others missed, might speak up, despite the risk, might change the world simply by refusing to remain invisible. The cycle continued, but now it had a name, a purpose, a power that no amount of mercury or money could poison. The Seattle case proved to be more complex than anything Angela had encountered before. 3 adopted children, now adults dead within 6 months of each other, all from different families, with no connection except one. They'd all been adopted through the same agency 30 years ago, an agency that no longer existed. Angela stood in the rain outside the 3rd victim's house, studying the scene while Foster interviewed the family inside. Something about this felt different from the cleaners, or the mercury protocol. This was older, deeper, more patient. The family says she was perfectly healthy until 3 months ago, Foster said, joining Angela under the eave. Then sudden onset of symptoms that looked exactly like Huntington's disease. But she was adopted, Angela said. No family history. Exactly. And the other 2 victims, one diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's, the other with a rare form of muscular dystrophy. All genetic diseases, but none of them had the genetics. Angela's phone rang. It was Victor, and his voice was strained. "Angela, I need you back in New York, immediately." "Victor, I'm in the middle of—" "Keisha is dying." The words hit Angela like a physical blow. She was on a plane within 2 hours, her mind racing. Keisha had been perfectly healthy just last week when they'd spoken about her research project. Now, she was in the same hospital where Angela had once mopped floors fighting for her life. Dr. Park met her at the entrance, her face grave. "It started yesterday. Sudden neurological symptoms, rapid deterioration." "Angela, it looks exactly like Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease." "Mad cow disease." "That's impossible. The incubation period." "I know. Nothing about this makes sense. But she asked for you. She keeps saying she noticed something." Keisha was barely conscious when Angela reached her room, but her eyes flickered open at Angela's voice. "Angela," she whispered. "The lab. Someone was there, asking about your old research." "Who?" Keisha, who was asking, said he was from the foundation, wanted to preserve your work. Dr. Chen. Angela's blood ran cold. There was no Dr. Chen at the foundation. "Keisha, did he give you anything? Any papers to sign, anything to drink?" "Coffee. He brought coffee. Said it was from you." Angela turned to Dr. Park. "Test everything. Blood, spinal fluid, everything. Look for prion diseases but also synthetic compounds that could mimic them." "You think she was poisoned?" "I think someone's sending me a message." While the tests ran, Angela called Foster. "The Seattle cases and Keisha, they're connected. Someone's targeting people connected to my work." "That's a big leap." "No, listen. The 3 victims in Seattle, I looked into it. They were all adopted through the Bright Futures Agency. Guess who funded that agency 30 years ago? Morrison's grandmother. The one who started all this during the war." Foster was silent for a moment. "You think this goes back that far?" "I think Morrison was telling the truth. This is bigger than we imagined. And now they're coming after people I care about to stop me from digging deeper." The test results on Keisha came back showing something unprecedented. A synthetic prion designed to mimic natural disease, but working 100 times faster. "This is genius," Dr. Park said, studying the molecular structure. "Evil genius, but genius nonetheless. Whoever created this understands protein folding at a level we're just beginning to explore." "Can you stop it?" "Maybe. If we can figure out how it was designed, we might be able to create an inhibitor. But Angela, this is beyond anything I've seen." Angela spent the next 72 hours in the lab, working with a desperation she'd never felt before. Keisha was deteriorating rapidly, and 3 more cases had appeared, all students from the foundation, all pursuing chemistry or related fields. "They're targeting the next generation," Victor said, watching Angela work. "Anyone who might continue your work." "Then we stop them," Angela said fiercely. "We figure this out." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Marcus, who'd been investigating the fake Dr. Chen, found surveillance footage from a coffee shop near the university. The man's face was obscured, but Angela noticed something, a distinctive way of holding his cup, pinky extended, that she'd seen before. "Oh my God," she breathed. "It's Steinberg." "He's in federal prison," Foster said when Angela called. "Then check. Right now, check if he's really there." The answer came back within an hour, Dr. Richard Steinberg had died in prison 3 months ago officially. But the body in his cell belonged to someone else, a vagrant who disappeared around the same time. "He faked his death," Foster said. "Had help from the inside. He's been free for months. And he's finishing what Morrison started. But this is personal now. He blames me for his arrest for ruining his life." Angela threw herself back into the work with renewed determination. If Steinberg had designed this synthetic prion, there had to be a weakness, something he'd overlooked. She studied his previous work papers he'd published years ago, looking for patterns in his thinking. And then she found a consistent error in his protein modeling, so small most people wouldn't notice. But Angela had been trained to see what others missed. "He always forgets to account for copper ions," she told Dr. Park excitedly. "Look in every one of his papers, there's this same oversight. If this synthetic prion has the same weakness." They tested the theory on Keisha, first introducing a carefully calibrated copper-based compound to her system. Within hours, her deterioration slowed. Within days, it stopped entirely. "It's working," Dr. Park announced to the assembled team. "The prion is breaking down." But Angela knew this was just the beginning. Steinberg was still out there, and he wouldn't stop. The families of the Seattle victims deserved justice, and somewhere Morrison's grandmother's legacy continued to poison the world. That night, exhausted but unable to sleep, Angela sat in Keisha's room watching the young woman breathe steadily for the first time in a week. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Clever girl. But you're playing with forces beyond your comprehension. The protocol isn't just about mercury. It's about evolution selection controlling who lives and who dies. You saved a few. We'll kill hundreds. Unless you stop." Angela showed the message to Foster, who immediately started a trace. But Angela already knew they wouldn't find anything. Steinberg was too smart for that. "We need to be smarter," Angela said. "He's arrogant, wants me to know how brilliant he is. That message, he's challenging me. So what do? We accept the challenge." Angela crafted her response carefully, sending it to every dark web forum she could find. "The student has surpassed the teacher. Your synthetic prion was child's play to defeat. If you want to prove your superiority, face me directly, unless you're afraid of a former housekeeper with an unfinished degree." The response came within hours, this time to her official FBI email. "Tomorrow night, Warehouse District Building 47. Come alone, or everyone in that hospital dies." "Absolutely not," Marcus said immediately. "It's a trap." "Of course it's a trap," Angela agreed. "But it's also an opportunity. He's arrogant, needs to prove he's superior. He'll want to explain everything, show off his brilliance. And kill you. Maybe. Or maybe I can do what I do best, see what he doesn't expect me to see." Foster was already mobilizing a team, but Angela knew Steinberg would be watching. He'd have contingencies, probably more synthetic prions, ready to release if he spotted FBI presence. "Let me go in alone," Angela said. "Wire me up, have teams ready, but let me face him. It's the only way." Victor, who'd been silent throughout the discussion, finally spoke. "I'm going with you." "Victor, no. He killed my son, poisoned me, targeted Keisha because of her connection to my foundation. I have as much right to face him as you do." Angela wanted to argue, but she saw the determination in his eyes. The same look he'd had when he'd insisted on funding her education, on creating the foundation, on fighting back against the darkness that had nearly killed him. "Fine," she said. "But we do this my way." The warehouse district was deserted at midnight shadows, and silence broken only by the distant sound of water against the docks. Building 47 loomed before them, its broken windows like dead eyes. "You came," Steinberg's voice echoed from speakers hidden throughout the building. "And brought the billionaire. How touching." "Show yourself," Angela called out. "Or are you afraid to face us directly?" A laugh, cold and metallic through the speakers. "Afraid. My dear Angela, I'm disappointed. After everything, you still don't understand. This isn't about fear or courage. It's about evolution." Lights flickered on, revealing Steinberg standing on a platform above them, older, gaunter, but with the same arrogant bearing. Around him were dozens of vials, each containing different colored liquids. "Do you know what these are?" he asked, gesturing to the vials. "Each one is a masterpiece. Synthetic diseases that can mimic any genetic disorder, any infection, any natural death. The culmination of 70 years of research started by Morrison's grandmother and perfected by me." "You're insane," Victor said flatly. "Am I? Look at the world. Overpopulation, resource depletion, genetic degradation. Someone has to make the hard choices. Someone has to decide who lives and who dies." "And you think that should be you?" Angela asked, moving slowly closer, noting every detail of the setup. "Not me alone. The protocol. We're not murderers, we're gardeners pruning the human tree so it can grow stronger. You killed 3 innocent people in Seattle. You tried to kill Keisha and others." "Innocent?" Steinberg laughed. "Those 3 in Seattle were part of an experiment from 30 years ago. Genetic modifications Morrison's grandmother pioneered. They were never meant to live this long. Their deaths were just delayed maintenance." Angela felt sick, but she kept him talking, kept him focused on his own brilliance while she studied the vials. There, 3rd row, 2nd from the left. The liquid was slightly more viscous than the others, catching the light differently. "And Keisha." "The other students. Casualties of war. You declared war on the protocol when you exposed Morrison. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences?" "I think you're a coward," Angela said bluntly. "Hiding behind synthetic diseases and poisons. Real scientists create. You only destroy." Steinberg's face contorted with rage. He grabbed one of the vials, the one Angela had noticed. "Destroy. This single vial could eliminate half of Manhattan in 6 weeks, and no one would ever know it wasn't natural. That's not destruction, that's art." "That's the antidote," Angela said calmly. Steinberg froze. "What? That vial. It's not a poison. It's the antidote to your synthetic prions. The viscosity is different the way it refracts light. You keep it close because you're terrified of your own creations. You're not a god. You're a frightened old man playing with chemistry sets." For a moment, Steinberg just stared at her. Then he smiled, slow and terrible. "Clever to the end. Yes, it's an antidote. One of many. But knowing that won't save you." He raised his hand, revealing a small device. "Dead man's switch. I release this trigger and every vial breaks. A cocktail of synthetic diseases that will make the Black Death look like a cold. So the question is, Angela, can you stop me before I let go?" "I don't have to," Angela said. The shot came from behind Steinberg Marcus, who'd been in position for an hour waiting for the right moment. Not a kill shot, but precise, hitting Steinberg's hand and sending the device flying. FBI agents swarmed in, but Angela was already moving, grabbing the antidote vial before it could fall. Steinberg lunged for the other vials, but Victor was there, his cane swinging with surprising force, sending the man sprawling. "For my son," Victor said quietly. As the agent secured Steinberg and carefully contained the vials, Angela noticed something, a notebook fallen from Steinberg's pocket. She picked it up, flipping through pages of formulas and notes, and her blood ran cold. "Foster," she called urgently. "This isn't over. Look at this." The notebook contained addresses, dates, targets. The protocol wasn't just Steinberg and Morrison. There were cells in 12 countries each with their own arsenal of synthetic diseases. "My God," Foster breathed. "It's a network. He was just one piece." Steinberg, being led away in handcuffs, laughed. "You think you've won? You've barely scratched the surface. The protocol has existed for 70 years. We're doctors, scientists, executives, politicians. We're everywhere, and you'll never find us all." "Maybe not," Angela said, clutching the notebook. "But we'll find enough. And we'll keep looking, keep fighting until people like you can't hide in the shadows anymore." As Steinberg was driven away, Angela stood in the warehouse with Victor Foster and Marcus, surrounded by evidence of horrors that could have been unleashed. "What now?" Victor asked. "Now we use this." Angela held up the notebook to find the others, to stop them before they can release their poisons. "That could take years," Foster said. "Then we better get started." Keisha recovered fully the antidote Angela had secured, proving even more effective than their improvised treatment. She returned to her studies with a new determination, having seen firsthand the importance of their work. "I want to help," she told Angela. "Not just with my studies, but with the investigation. I noticed something when that fake Dr. Chen approached me, a smell on his clothes like almonds and metal." Angela smiled grimly. "The scent of poison. You're already learning to see what others miss." The investigation expanded internationally, with Angela consulting for intelligence agencies around the world. Each breakthrough led to more questions, more connections, a web of poison that stretched back decades. 6 months after Steinberg's arrest, Angela stood before Congress, testifying about the protocol and the need for new detection methods, better safeguards, more resources for those who saw what others missed. "The greatest threat isn't the poisons we know," she told them. "It's the ones we haven't discovered yet. The synthetic diseases being developed in secret labs. The genetic modifications we won't understand for years. We need people trained to see the invisible, to question the obvious, to speak up when everyone else is silent." The Angela Bowmont Foundation expanded into the Invisible Warriors Initiative training. A new generation of investigators who came from unexpected backgrounds: housekeepers, janitors, home health aides, anyone whose job made them invisible but observant. "You're creating an army," Foster told her one day watching a training session where former service workers learned forensic chemistry. "I'm creating witnesses," Angela corrected. "People who see truth where others see nothing." Victor's health continued to deteriorate. The thallium had done permanent damage, but his spirit remained strong. He used his remaining time to fund research, support victims' families, and ensure the foundation would continue long after he was gone. "I've rewritten my will," he told Angela one afternoon as they sat in his office overlooking the city. "The company, the fortune, it all goes to the foundation, to continuing this work." "Victor, that's billions." "It's justice. My son died because I had money someone wanted. Now that money will be used to stop others from dying the same way." Angela felt tears in her eyes. "He would be proud of you." "I hope so. I hope he knows that his death meant something, led to something better." That night, Angela received another message. This one from an encrypted source even Foster couldn't trace. "The protocol remembers. The protocol endures. The protocol evolves. You've won battles, but the war continues. We're watching, Ms. Bowmont. We're always watching." Angela showed it to Marcus, who was as always checking her apartment for threats. "They're trying to scare you," he said. "They're succeeding," Angela admitted. "But fear doesn't mean stopping. It means being careful, being smart, being ready." She looked out at the city lights, thinking of all the invisible people out there, cleaning offices and hospitals, seeing things others ignored. Each one a potential warrior in this strange war, each one capable of noticing the crucial detail that could save lives. Her phone rang. Foster again. "Angela, we've got 3 suspicious deaths in London. all diagnosed as different diseases, but all worked for the same pharmaceutical company. "I'll be on the next flight," Angela said, already reaching for her go-bag. Because this was her life now, chasing shadows, finding patterns, speaking for the dead. She'd gone from being invisible to being essential, from ignored to irreplaceable. As she prepared to leave, Angela looked at the photo on her desk. Her graduating class from Columbia, Keisha, and the other foundation students. Victor, Foster, even Marcus, trying not to smile. Her chosen family brought together by poison and purpose. The protocol might endure, might evolve, might watch from the shadows. But Angela Bowmont would be watching too, with eyes trained by 15 years of invisibility to see what others couldn't, wouldn't, or didn't want to see. And somewhere out there in a hospital or office building, another invisible person was noticing something strange, something wrong, something that might save lives, if only someone would listen. The war continued, but so did the warriors. And Angela would make sure they were ready. The London cases turned out to be the beginning of something far worse than Angela had imagined. 3 pharmaceutical researchers all dead within a month each from a different rare disease. But what Angela found in their labs would haunt her for years to come. They were working on something called Project Renaissance. The surviving colleague, Dr. James Hartwell, told her in a trembling voice. They sat in a secure room at MI6 headquarters, Foster participating via encrypted video link from Washington. Gene therapy, but not the kind you're thinking of. This was about rewriting human DNA, entirely making people immune to all diseases. That sounds like a medical breakthrough, Angela said, carefully noting the fear in his eyes. Or a weapon, Hartwell whispered. Because if you can make people immune, you can also make them vulnerable. Specifically vulnerable. Imagine a disease that only affects people with certain genetic markers, race, ethnicity, even family lines. Angela felt her blood run cold. Targeted biological weapons. The 3 who died, Sarah, Michael, and Chen, they discovered someone had already weaponized their research. They were going to expose it. Then they got sick. Angela studied the medical files again. 3 different diseases, but now she saw the pattern. Each disease targeted the exact system that researcher had specialized in. Sarah, the neurologist, died of a rare brain disease. Michael, the cardiovascular expert, suffered sudden heart failure. Chen, who studied immune systems, was killed by an autoimmune disorder. Someone used their own research against them, Angela said. Poetic justice, the killer would probably call it. Or a message, Foster said through the screen. Stop looking or suffer the same fate. But Angela had never been good at stopping. She spent 3 weeks in London working with British intelligence tracing the connections. The trail led to a biotech company called Prometheus Corp, owned through shell companies by names she was starting to recognize, all connected to the protocol. They're not just killing anymore, Angela told Foster and Victor in a secure conference call. They're evolving their methods. Instead of poisoning individuals, they're creating diseases that can be controlled, targeted, turned on and off like a switch. That's not possible, Victor said, but his voice lacked conviction. It shouldn't be, Angela agreed. But the research is there, and someone's been testing it. The someone turned out to be Dr. Elizabeth Cray Morrison's protege, who'd taken over the protocol's operations after Morrison's arrest. Angela had been tracking her for months, always arriving too late, finding only bodies and encrypted data that led nowhere. But this time, Cray had made a mistake. She'd left behind a single hair at the London lab, caught on a broken ventilation grate. DNA analysis revealed not just her identity, but something more disturbing. Her own DNA had been modified, enhanced, made resistant to every known poison and disease. She's experimented on herself, Angela told the assembled task force. Made herself into the perfect killer, immune to her own weapons. How do we stop someone like that? One of the British agents asked. Angela thought of her years cleaning hospitals of all the invisible people who'd been ignored, dismissed, overlooked. We don't fight her on her terms, we fight her on ours. The plan was audacious, Maybe impossible. Angela reached out to her network of invisible warriors, former service workers, now trained in observation and basic chemistry. She had them positioned at every major hospital laboratory and research facility in 12 countries. "We're not looking for her," Angela explained to them via encrypted video. "We're looking for what she needs. Even with genetic modifications, she still requires supplies, equipment, specific chemicals. She thinks she's invisible because she's powerful. But we know better. We know that everyone leaves traces. Everyone needs resources. Everyone has patterns." It was Keisha who spotted it first. Now in her 3rd year of chemistry studies, she was working part-time at a medical supply company to help fund her education. "Angela," she called, excited. "Someone's been ordering specific combinations of reagents. Small amounts, different names, different addresses, but always the same combination. The exact compounds you'd need to synthesize the genetic markers from the London victims." Angela felt her pulse quicken. "Can you trace the deliveries?" "Already did. They all go to different addresses, but they're all within a mile radius of an abandoned pharmaceutical plant in Newark." Within hours, Angela was on site with Foster's team. The plant looked deserted, but Angela's trained eye caught the subtle signs, fresh tire tracks hidden under scattered debris, windows that looked broken but were actually one-way glass, the faint hum of generators masked by traffic noise. "She's here," Angela said quietly to Foster. "But this is too easy. She wanted us to find her." As if in response, speakers throughout the plant crackled to life. Cray's voice, cultured and cold, filled the air. "Angela Bowmont, the housekeeper who thinks she's a hero. How delightful that you've finally arrived." "Show yourself," Angela called out. "Unless you're afraid of someone with an unfinished PhD." Cray laughed. "Afraid, my dear, I'm evolved beyond fear, beyond pain, beyond the weaknesses that plague ordinary humans. Would you like to see what the future looks like?" The doors to the plant opened, and Cray walked out. She was younger than Angela had expected, perhaps 35, with the kind of severe beauty that came from absolute confidence. But there was something wrong with her eyes. They seemed to shift color in the light, and her skin had an unusual sheen. "The genetic modifications," Cray said, noticing Angela's stare. "Beautiful, aren't they? I can metabolize any poison, survive any disease, heal from injuries in hours. I am what humanity could become if we weren't held back by ethics and fear." "You're an abomination," Victor said. He'd insisted on coming despite Angela's protests, and now stood beside her, leaning heavily on his cane. "Victor Blackwell," Cray smiled. "The billionaire who lived when he should have died. You're the reason all this started, you know. If you'd just died quietly from Burke's poison, the protocol would have continued undetected. But you had to survive, had to have your justice." "I had help," Victor said, glancing at Angela. "Yes, the inspirational housekeeper. Tell me, Angela, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd stayed silent? How many people would still be alive?" Angela felt the barb hit home. She'd wondered that herself in dark moments. Every person the protocol had killed since her discovery felt like blood on her hands. "They'd be alive," Angela said steadily. "But so would the protocol. And you'd have kept killing, kept poisoning, kept playing God with people's lives." "We are gods," Cray said simply. "Evolution made manifest. The protocol isn't about death, it's about transformation. Humanity is at a crossroads. We can evolve, become something greater, or we can stagnate and die. Through genocide." Foster stepped forward, her weapon drawn, but not yet aimed. "Through selection. The weak die, the strong survive, the exceptional thrive. It's nature's way accelerated." Angela noticed something. Cray kept touching her neck, a subtle gesture most would miss. There was a small patch of discolored skin there, barely visible. "The modifications aren't perfect," Angela said suddenly. "You're breaking down, aren't you? The enhanced DNA is unstable." Cray's composure cracked slightly. A minor setback. Soon to be corrected. That's why you killed those researchers. They discovered the flaw in Project Renaissance. The modifications work initially, but the human body eventually rejects them. You're dying just slower than your victims. Clever, Cray admitted. Yes, the current modifications have a shelf life, 5 years, maybe 6. But the next generation will be permanent. Imagine, Angela, a world where disease doesn't exist, where humans can adapt to any environment, where death itself becomes a choice. A world where you decide who lives and dies, Angela countered. Someone has to. Why not those with the vision to see beyond petty morality? Angela had heard enough. She pulled out a small vial from her pocket, the antidote she'd synthesized from Steinberg's notes modified based on her study of the London victims. What's that? Cray asked, amused. Your cure, Angela said. Not for your modifications, but for your worldview. You think evolution means becoming something other than human. But humanity isn't about our DNA. It's about our choices, our connections, our ability to see each other's worth regardless of strength or weakness. How poetic. And useless. Cray pulled out her own vial filled with something that seemed to move on its own. This is my latest creation. A synthetic organism that targets specific DNA sequences. I could release it now and kill everyone here except me. Or, she smiled, I could be more selective. Just the old billionaire. Or the idealistic FBI agent. Or you, Angela. Who should it be? None of them, a new voice said. Everyone turned to see Keisha and a dozen other invisible warriors, all wearing hazmat suits surrounding the building. Each carried industrial sprayers connected to large tanks. What is this? Cray demanded. Chlorine dioxide, Angela said calmly. Industrial strength. It denatures proteins, destroys organic compounds, neutralizes pretty much any biological agent. We've been spraying the entire area for the past hour while you've been talking. Your synthetic organism, if you release it, won't survive more than seconds. Cray's face contorted with rage. You think you're clever. I have facilities in 12 countries, resources you can't imagine. Had, Foster corrected. We've been raiding them simultaneously while you've been monologuing. Your network is finished. For the first time, real fear flickered in Cray's modified eyes. She turned to run, but her enhanced body betrayed her. The breakdown Angela had noticed was accelerating her muscles, seizing her superhuman speed. Failing. She collapsed, the vial rolling from her hand. Angela caught it before it could break, securing it in a containment unit. Help me! Cray gasped, her skin now visibly deteriorating. The modifications! They're killing me faster than expected. Angela knelt beside her medical training, overriding everything else. We need to get her to a hospital. No. Cray grabbed her arm with surprising strength. No hospitals. They can't help. Only the protocol's research can save me now. The protocol is finished, Angela said gently. But we have your research, the London team's work. Maybe we can find a way to stabilize. You'd save me? Cray laughed bitterly. After everything. I'm not you, Angela said simply. I don't get to choose who lives and dies. I just try to help where I can. Cray stared at her for a long moment. The master files, she whispered. Shanghai. Building 7. Sublevel 3. Everything's there. All the research, the antidotes, the names of every protocol member. She coughed, blood speckling her lips. Morrison was wrong about you. You're not just someone who sees what others miss. You're someone who sees what others are afraid to see, that even monsters are human. Cray died 3 hours later in a secure medical facility, her enhanced body finally consuming itself. Her last words were a warning. The protocol was just the beginning. Others will come. Evolution doesn't stop. The Shanghai raid uncovered a treasure trove of information, decades of research, hundreds of names, plans for biological weapons that could have decimated populations. It took months to process it all, years to track down all the members. But they did it. One by one, the protocol's members were arrested, their laboratories shut down, their poisons neutralized. Angela testified at trial after trial, explaining the chemistry of murder to judges and juries who could barely comprehend the evil they were confronting. Victor lived to see the last trial, though by then he was confined to a wheelchair, his body finally succumbing to the long-term effects of thallium poisoning. He died on a quiet Tuesday morning, Angela holding his hand. "Did we win?" he asked her, his voice barely a whisper. "We stopped them," Angela said, tears streaming down her face. "That's not what I asked. Did we win?" Angela thought of all the lives saved, all the invisible warriors now working in hospitals and labs around the world, all the detection systems in place that made poisoning nearly impossible. "Yes," she said firmly. "We won." Victor smiled. "Good. Keep winning, Angela. For my son. For Keisha. For all the invisible people who deserve to be seen." He died peacefully, the man who'd been saved by a housekeeper and had in turn saved countless others through his foundation and his fortune. The funeral was attended by hundreds of FBI agents, scientists, politicians, and dozens of former service workers whose lives had been changed by the Invisible Warriors Initiative. Angela spoke about transformation, about how poison had brought them together, but purpose had kept them united. 5 years later, Dr. Angela Bowmont stood at a podium at the World Health Organization, presenting the Global Poison Detection Protocol, a system based on her work that could identify any known toxin within hours, and was already developing algorithms to detect unknown ones. "The greatest threats to human health aren't always viruses or bacteria," she told the assembly. "Sometimes they're human choices, human greed, human blindness to the suffering of others. But just as humans can choose to poison, we can choose to heal. We can choose to see the invisible, hear the silenced, and speak for those who cannot speak." After her presentation, she was approached by a young man in a janitor's uniform. "Dr. Bowmont," he said nervously, "I work here at the WHO. I clean the labs, and I've noticed something strange." Angela smiled, remembering another time, another place, when she'd been the one noticing strange things while pushing a mop. "Tell me everything," she said, pulling out her phone to call Foster. "Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out." Because the work was never done. There would always be new poisons, new protocols, new threats. But there would also always be people willing to see what others missed, willing to speak up despite the risk, willing to fight for truth even when it seemed impossible. The protocol had been right about one thing: evolution doesn't stop. But it wasn't about becoming superhuman or selecting who deserved to live. It was about evolving beyond the blindness that let evil flourish in shadows, beyond the arrogance that dismissed the observations of the invisible, beyond the fear that kept people silent when they should speak. Angela Bowmont had started as a housekeeper who noticed something wrong. She'd become Dr. Bowmont, the world's leading expert on forensic toxicology. But at her core, she was still the same person, someone who saw what others missed and refused to look away. The janitor began his story, and Angela listened with the same intensity she'd once brought to mopping floors, knowing that in his words might be the key to stopping the next threat, saving the next life, winning the next battle in the war that never quite ended. But now she wasn't fighting alone. Around the world, in hospitals and laboratories, offices and homes, the invisible warriors were watching, noting, ready to speak up when something was wrong. The protocol's legacy of death had been transformed into a network of life, of vigilance, of hope. And somewhere, perhaps Victor Blackwell and his son were finally at peace, knowing that their deaths had meaning, that from poison had come purpose, from invisibility had come insight, from one housekeeper's courage had come a revolution in how the world saw its invisible people. The evolution Cray had spoken of had happened, just not the way she'd imagined. Humanity hadn't evolved beyond disease or death. It had evolved beyond blindness, beyond dismissal, beyond the arrogance that let evil flourish, because good people were too proud to listen to those they considered beneath them. Angela finished listening to the janitor's story. It was concerning unusual chemical orders, researchers working late on undocumented projects, whispers of something called Protocol 2.0. "Foster," she said into her phone. "We have a situation." "Yes again." "No, I'm not paranoid. Meet me in Geneva tomorrow." "And Foster. Bring the team, all of them." She hung up and turned back to the janitor. "You did the right thing speaking up. Now let me teach you what to look for next." Because this was her true legacy, not the arrests or the trials or the detection systems, but the knowledge passed on, the eyes opened, the voices empowered. Every invisible person who learned to see what others missed, who found the courage to speak up, who refused to accept that their observations didn't matter. They were all her children in this strange war. Her army of watchers, her proof that sometimes the most powerful person in the room was the one everyone else forgot was there. The work continued, would always continue. But Angela Bowmont was no longer fighting alone. She had an army of the invisible, and together they would keep watching, keep speaking, keep saving lives, one observation at a time. The war against those who would poison the world might never end, but neither would the vigilance of those who'd learned to see. And in that endless watching, that refusal to be dismissed, that courage to speak truth to power, lay humanity's real evolution, not towards superhuman perfection, but towards simply seeing each other, truly seeing and recognizing that everyone, no matter how invisible they might seem, had something vital to contribute. The janitor pulled out a notebook ready to learn. Angela smiled, remembering her own notebook from all those years ago, filled with observations about Victor's symptoms. The cycle continued, the watchers multiplied, and the world became a little bit safer, because someone had finally learned to see the people who saw everything.